Hello friends, welcome to today's daily devotion. I'm Kerry Wood, the pastor of the Goldston Methodist Church in Goldston, North Carolina. We are a global Methodist congregation, and this week we are attempting to make sense of the 13th chapter of Romans. I've said that I think this chapter may be the most controversial chapter of any of Paul's chapters, any of Paul's passages to help us understand relating to the world, because this chapter has been used to justify the divine right of kings, the absolute authority of rulers, even when those rulers do bad and atrocious things. But here Paul is telling us that God can use even evil rulers to do God's good work. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's look today at Romans chapter 13, verses 6 and 7. Hear now these words. This too is the reason for paying your taxes. For the officials are God's officers devoting themselves to this special work. In all cases, pay what is due from you. Tribute where tribute is due, taxes where taxes are due, respect where respect is due, and honor where honor is due. So I think this is the key section to understanding the historical context to what Paul is talking about, and to recognize the band-aid that this is rather than the blanket to understanding our submission to governmental authority. It all comes down to taxes. Do you like paying taxes? It's bad enough here in the United States, where we have a pretty fair tax system, all things considered. Now notice I said all things considered. In Paul's day, just as in Jesus' day, we find that the taxation situation was not very fair. Jesus especially had to deal with this whole big question of how do we understand the Roman rule, and the Jews especially revolted against Roman rule and the taxation that they were experiencing. You go back to the Gospels and it is full of story after story of tax collectors and how despised they were. And even the climax of the challenges to Jesus during Holy Week in the temple courts had to do with, should we pay taxes to Caesar or not? Do you remember how Jesus handled that situation? He asked for a Roman coin, and he asked, whose inscription and face is here? And they replied, well, it's Caesar's. And Jesus said, well, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and render unto God what is God's. You see, for the Jews, the question of taxes was a political question. But Jesus gave them a theological answer. And that is what Paul is doing in Romans 13. Paul is dealing with a political situation, and he's giving it a theological expression. Paul is telling us we should pay our taxes rather than rebel against them. We should submit to this authority instead of fighting against this authority. Pay what is due from you. Now, what does he mean by tribute and taxes and respect and honor? What are these four different categories? Well, I don't have time to dive deeply into them with a short daily devotion, so I encourage you, go look those words up and see if you can figure out what you think Paul means as he differentiates all of these categories. You might be surprised by what you learn. And I'll see you tomorrow for our next daily devotion.